If you have a credit card, a car loan, or a mortgage right now, there's a high chance you're already inside a financial trap, and the dangerous part is, it doesn't feel like one yet, because in 2026, something quietly changed in the system, and it's the same kind of shift that destroyed millions of middle-class families. Not during the crash, but after it. Here's what I mean. The average American household is now sitting on record debt, while interest rates are still high. And inflation is rising again. That combination creates something economists call an interest rate trap, but forget the term, here's what it actually means for you. A mortgage that used to cost $1,200 a month is now over $2,200. Same house, same income, just a different rate environment. Credit cards are charging 20%, and the Federal Reserve is not coming to save you with rate cuts this year, which means the system most people are relying on is no longer working. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how this trap works, why 84% of the middle class gets caught in it, and what the other 16% are already doing differently before it's too late. Here's where it gets dangerous. If you're like most Americans right now, you're carrying debt that was never meant to survive this kind of interest rate environment. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, American families are carrying a combined $18.8 trillion in total debt, an all-time record. It grew by $740 billion in a single year. And the delinquency rate, the percentage of households already falling behind, just hit 4.8%, the highest since 2017, higher than before the pandemic. Now here's the part nobody is telling you directly. Those numbers were recorded before oil approached $120 per barrel, before the OECD revised its US inflation projection to 4.2% for 2026, before JP Morgan's chief economist told the world on March 19th that the Federal Reserve will make zero rate cuts this year and that the next move is more likely to be a hike in 2027. The data that already looked alarming was collected before the conditions that make it worse had arrived. So what exactly is an interest rate trap? It's a condition where a household becomes so indebted that no movement in rates is safe. Rates go up, debt payments become unaffordable. Rates go down, inflation erodes every dollar of savings faster than the relief arrives. There's no exit through rates alone. The only resolution is through the debt itself, paid down, defaulted on, inflated away, or restructured. Every path is painful. The only question is which pain, in which order, for which households. This trap moves through 4 stages. Understanding them is the difference between seeing what's happening to you and being blindsided by it. Stage 1, the accumulation phase. The trap didn't start in 2026. It started when rates were near zero and everyone thought money was free. Between 2020 and 2022, the Federal Reserve held rates at near zero. The government injected trillions in stimulus. Americans responded the way rational people always do. They borrowed mortgages under 3%, car loans at trivial rates. Credit cards used to bridge the growing gap between what things cost and what paychecks provided. Mortgage balances hit $13.17 trillion. Credit card balances reached $1.28 trillion, an all-time record. Auto loans grew to $1.67 trillion. Total household debt expanded by $4.6 trillion in 3 years. One reasonable financial decision at a time. The trap was being built. Stage 2, rate shock. Here's where the trap closed. Starting in March 2022, the Fed raised rates 11 times. By July 2023, the federal funds rate hit 5.5%, the highest in 22 years and the fastest rate increase in 4 decades. Here's what that meant for real people. A medium-priced home financed during the pandemic at 2.9% carried a monthly payment of about $1,200. That same home financed after rates crossed 7% cost over $2,200 a month, a $1,000 monthly increase, same house, same income. The only thing that changed was the Fed's decision about inflation, and the cost of that decision was transferred, dollar by dollar, to every middle-class household that needed to borrow. Think about what that means for a family earning $80,000 a year, roughly the US median. They did everything right, saved for a down payment, maintained their credit score, planned responsibly, and in less than 24 months, their purchasing power in the housing market collapsed by nearly half, not because of poor decisions, because the price of money changed. But here's the real problem, and it's one almost nobody is talking about. More than 6 million American homeowners hold mortgages below 3%. If they sell and move, they have to finance at 5, 6, or 7%. The only financially sensible decision is to stay. So they stay. Inventory stays constrained. Prices stay elevated. Over 75% of homes currently listed are unaffordable to a household earning the median income. To qualify for a mortgage on a medium-priced home today, you need to earn at least $113,000 a year. The median household earns about $80,000. That's a $33,000 annual gap, and it is not closing. It's widening. Stage 3, paralysis. This is where we are right now. The Fed has cut rates 3 times from their peak down 2.3, 5.3, 75. But that's still far above the level that makes existing debt manageable. On March 18, 2026, the Fed voted 11-1 to hold rates exactly where they are. JP Morgan's chief economist has broken with even the official dot plot, saying no cuts are coming in 2026 and the next move is more likely to be a hike. Meanwhile, the OECD projects us inflation at 4.2% this year, up from 2.6% in 2025. The Fed's February Producer Price Index showed inflation at 0.7% in a single month, more than double what economists expected. None of that fully reflects the oil shock from the Iran conflict, which has pushed crude toward $120 a barrel and is injecting cost pressure into every supply chain in the country. The Fed is trapped in a way it hasn't been since the 1970s. It can't cut inflation is too high and getting worse. It can't raise doing so would collapse housing and push delinquency from alarming into catastrophic. Every hand on the lever is frozen, and into that frozen system walk 175 million American credit card holders, millions of homeowners with adjustable rate instruments, and the lower half of the middle class already running out of runway. Stage 4, the reset. And what happens next is where most people get wiped out. The reset isn't a government announcement. It's the organic, mathematically inevitable consequence of too much debt meeting a rate environment that makes that debt unsustainable. It runs through defaults, foreclosures, the quiet financial destruction of households that look stable on paper right until the moment they stop being stable. Because once this starts, it doesn't stop. The data says it's already begun. Delinquency on all US household debt hit 4.8% at the end of 2025, the highest since 2017. Student loan serious delinquency surged from 0.7% to 16.19% in a single year, a 23-fold increase in 12 months. Serious credit card delinquency, 12.7%. Auto loan serious delinquency, 5.2% and climbing. HELOC delinquency more than doubled in a single year. These aren't rounding errors. They are the forward signal of a cascade running directly through the financial infrastructure of the American middle class, and the Fed's own research confirms the deterioration is most concentrated in lower income zip codes. In plain terms, the reset hits the bottom of the middle class first, then moves up. That's exactly how every financial crisis in modern American history has worked. It starts at the margins. By the time it reaches the center, the margins have already been in crisis for months. Now I want to show you 3 historical moments where this exact pattern ran to its conclusion. Not just history, a map of where this leads. The 1970s stagflation trap. In the late 1960s and early 70s, American households built their financial models on cheap oil and cheap money. Then in October 1973, the Arab oil embargo hit. Oil quadrupled virtually overnight. Inflation surged into double digits. The Fed faced the same impossible choice it faces today: cut rates and make inflation worse, or raise rates and crush an already stressed economy. The Fed accommodated, inflation spiraled. It took Paul Volcker raising the federal funds rate to 20% in 1981 to finally break it. The cost: real wages fell for an entire decade. Savings eroded invisibly month by month. Mortgage rates surpassed 15%. An entire generation of would-be homeowners was locked out of the primary wealth-building mechanism of the middle class for 10 full years. Philip Braun, economist at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, stated publicly in March 2026 that today's environment is more like the 1970s than any period in the past 4 years. Conditions are, in his words, ripe for stagflation. The Fed's own research has confirmed that stagflation is their biggest identified risk in 2026. The 1970s didn't produce one identifiable crisis moment. It produced something far crueler: a slow, grinding, decade-long destruction of middle-class financial security that most people didn't recognize as a crisis until they were already deep inside it. Japan's lost decade. In the late 1980s, Japan experienced one of the most extreme asset bubbles in modern financial history. When the Bank of Japan raised rates from 2.5% to 6% over 18 months, the bubble burst. Real estate fell 60-70 in major cities. The Nikkei fell from 39,000 to below 8. But the critical lesson isn't the collapse. It's what happened next. The Bank of Japan cut rates to zero. The government launched massive stimulus programs. They deployed every conventional policy tool at maximum intensity. None of it worked, because the problem wasn't a liquidity shortage. It was that households were so deeply indebted that every dollar of stimulus went straight to servicing existing debt, not generating new economic activity. The economy went sideways for 20 years. This is called a balance sheet recession. Several prominent economists are now warning it could take hold in the American middle class in 2026. When households spend an increasing share of income on debt service, they stop spending on goods. When spending falls, businesses cut hiring. When employment weakens, more households fall behind. The loop runs in the exact opposite direction from the growth cycle that built the American middle class. 2008, the mechanism that mirrors today. Between 2000 and 2007, millions of Americans took out mortgages with teaser rates scheduled to reset at market rates after 2 or 3 years. When they signed, the payments were affordable. When the reset dates arrived after the Fed had raised rates steadily, those payments became unmanageable at $1,500. Monthly mortgage suddenly became $2,300. The cascade of foreclosures started in lower-income zip codes and moved through working-class and then middle-class neighborhoods. 8 million American households lost their homes. Home prices fell 30% nationally. Here's the detail that mirrors today directly. HELOC balances during the housing boom were almost universally tied to variable rates. When rates rose, HELOC payments rose automatically. Today, HELOC balances stand at $434 billion. HELOC serious delinquency just more than doubled in 12 months. The instrument is different. The rate environment is different, but the mechanism is identical. In 2026, the trap is set again, and the window to recognize it before it closes is measured in months, not years. Let me bring this out of the history books and directly into your monthly budget, because this isn't a macroeconomic abstraction. It's a set of specific numbers that may already live inside your household finances, working against you every single month. If you're like most Americans right now, you're spending roughly 11% of your disposable income on debt payments. That sounds manageable until you look beneath the average. High-income households are paying down debt and building assets. Lower and middle-income households are adding debt each month just to cover the gap between what things cost and what their paychecks provide. Those two groups are moving in opposite directions. That's not a stable equilibrium. That's a system under increasing strain moving in one direction. KPMG's January 2026 economic analysis confirmed that concern about both inflation and the labor market rose simultaneously in Q for 2025, the first time that combination has appeared since the 1970s. Consumer confidence fell to recession levels in December 2025. Real personal disposable income declined for 3 consecutive months. Consumers were drawing down savings just to maintain their standard of living. That's not resilience. That's a household that has run out of margin. Now here's the part nobody is telling you. The average American credit card charges approximately 20% annual interest, with $1.28 trillion in outstanding balances and roughly 60% of cardholders carrying a balance month-to-month. American consumers are paying around $150 billion per year in credit card interest alone. That $150 billion doesn't buy groceries, it doesn't pay rent, it doesn't fund retirement, it exits the middle-class economy permanently and flows directly into the earnings of financial institutions, a continuous automatic transfer of wealth running at 20% compounding monthly. With inflation above the Fed's target, oil elevated by the Iran conflict, and the OECD projecting the U.S. will be the highest inflation G7 nation in 2026, the gap between what middle-class households earn and what they need to spend keeps widening. That gap is being filled with debt when that debt can no longer be rolled over because rates are too high to refinance, credit limits are reached, or the next rate reset arrives. The gap becomes an acute financial emergency. A national mortgage expert cited by Go Banking Rates in early 2026 stated plainly, many U.S. households are one flat tire away from financial ruin, not one catastrophic event, one flat tire. Now here's why the 2026 reset is structurally more dangerous than 2008. In 2008, the debt stress was concentrated primarily in the mortgage market, specifically in the subprime and adjustable rate segments. That concentration meant analysts could identify the exposure, map the affected regions, and attempt targeted interventions. The problem had a defined perimeter. Today, the debt stress is distributed across every single category of household borrowing simultaneously. Mortgage delinquency rising, credit card serious delinquency at 12.7%, auto loan serious delinquency at 5.2% and climbing. Student loan serious delinquency went from 0.7% to 16.19% in a single year. Deterioration with no modern precedent. HELOC delinquency doubled in 12 months, every category at the same time. When the debt deterioration is this broadly distributed, there is no surgical policy response. The federal government is itself paying $1 trillion annually in interest on its own debt and operating with constrained fiscal capacity. The reset must run through every category simultaneously, and its aggregate impact on middle class household balance sheets will be larger and more durable than any single category crisis could produce. Now add the housing trap on top of the debt trap, because this is the cruelest element, not just what it's doing to affordability today, but what it's doing to the wealth-building capacity of every household that doesn't already own property at pandemic-era rates. Homeownership has been the primary vehicle through which American middle-class families build wealth for a century. It's the appreciating asset, the emergency resource, the inheritance, the thing that separates a household with a financial foundation from a household that is permanently one disruption away from crisis. Today, that vehicle is being systematically priced out of reach. The first-time buyer affordability index stood at 111.9 in 2020. The average household could comfortably qualify for a median-priced home. It fell to 61.9 by 2021 and has not recovered. Home sellers currently outnumber active buyers by more than 600,000, the widest buyer-seller gap ever recorded. Yet prices haven't cleared because 6 million homeowners locked into sub-3 mortgages have every rational incentive to stay exactly where they are. An entire generation of potential middle-class homeowners is being structurally excluded from the primary asset class through which the previous generation built their financial security. The trap doesn't have a single jaw. It has two closing simultaneously from opposite directions. So let me tell you exactly what the evidence says. To do right now, this analysis exists to create options, not to generate paralysis, and what the 16% are doing differently is straightforward, but it requires acting before the window closes. Priority 1, variable rate debt. This is urgent. Every dollar of variable rate debt in your household is fully exposed to the environment I just described. Credit cards at 20%, adjustable rate mortgages, HELOCs, if rates are not falling in 2026 and may rise in 2027, every month you carry variable rate debt is a month you're paying the absolute maximum possible cost in an environment where that cost is not decreasing on any timeline that helps you. The response isn't complicated. Aggressive paydown, prioritizing the highest rate balances first, combined with converting variable rate instruments into fixed rate alternatives wherever your credit profile allows. Here's the math that's impossible to ignore once you see it. At 20% interest compounding monthly, $6,500. Credit card balance on minimum payments takes 26 years to pay off and costs more than 3 times the original principal. That's not hidden in the fine print. That is the fine print. Priority 2. Build a genuine cash reserve. Not a credit card, not a HELOC, cash, liquid, accessible without borrowing. Consumer confidence is at recession levels. Real disposable income is falling. A 6-month cash reserve in this environment isn't timid. It's one of the most aggressive strategic positions a middle-class household can hold. It's the position that lets you absorb a disruption, a job loss, a medical event, a car breakdown without taking on new debt at 20% at the worst possible moment. Every household that enters the reset without a cash buffer is one disruption away from being forced deeper into the trap. Priority 3. Know what your debt actually costs you total, not monthly. The minimum payment on a $6,500 credit card balance at 20% is about $130 a month. At that rate, 26 years, more than 3 times the original amount. The institution has no incentive to make sure you calculate this. You do. Priority 4. Reassess home buying with clear eyes. Real estate agents are compensated only when you buy, mortgage brokers only when you close. The financial media runs on advertising from institutions that benefit from transactions. None of those parties have a structural incentive to tell you that this market at this moment in the rate cycle may represent one of the worst entry points for a leveraged home purchase in 3 decades. The $33,000 annual income gap between what the median household earns and what's required to qualify for a median-priced mortgage is a structural fact, not a temporary inconvenience. Priority 5. Stop paying the invisible inflation tax on your savings. If your savings are earning less than 4.2%, your money is losing purchasing power every single month invisibly, automatically. High-yield savings accounts currently offer for 4-5. Short-duration treasuries are yielding comparably on a $50,000 balance. The difference between earning near zero and matching inflation is $2,100 per year in purchasing power silently destroyed month by month. Priority 6. Know which side of the divide you're on. The 2026 reset creates a permanent structural divergence between 2 types of household. The first, genuine financial resilience, low fixed-rate debt, meaningful liquid savings, diversified income, assets that hold real value in an inflationary environment. The second, the appearance of financial stability, high income, high spending, high debt, and the assumption that last decade's conditions will continue indefinitely. The reset does not care about income level. A household earning $150,000 with $400,000 in variable rate debt and 2 months of savings is dramatically more exposed than a household earning $60,000 with $50,000 in fixed rate debt and 8 months of liquid reserves. The reset will educate both. The only difference is which one had the information to learn voluntarily before the lesson became mandatory. Goldman Sachs' Wealth Management Division published internal guidance in Q1 2026, noting that high net worth clients were accelerating debt paydowns and increasing cash positions. That guidance isn't on the evening news. It's the kind of repositioning that happens quietly at the institutional level while the general financial media debates whether the Fed will cut in September or December. The 84% of middle-class households that will struggle in the 2026 reset are not victims of poor judgment. They made reasonable decisions based on the rules that existed when they made them. They borrowed when rates were low. They bought homes because that's how the middle class builds wealth. They were told inflation was transitory, that rates would normalize, that the economy was fundamentally strong, and that the debt they'd accumulated was manageable. Every single one of those assurances turned out to be either wrong or incomplete. The 16% that navigate this period with their financial security intact are not smarter or more virtuous. They're the households that recognized earlier through institutional research, their own analysis, or something as simple as watching a video that explained the mechanism before it ran to its conclusion that the rules had changed. They made the urgent, uncomfortable decisions before the trap closed completely. The window for those decisions is still open. It is measurably narrower than it was 6 months ago. It will be measurably narrower 6 months from now. The 2026 reset is not coming. It is already running. The question is not whether it affects you. The question is whether you're positioned on the side where you retain choices or the side where the choices have already been made for you by the math. In our next video, we go a level deeper into what virtually no one in the mainstream financial media is covering with the specificity it deserves. The Federal Reserve loses Jerome Powell as chairman in May 2026. His successor's rate philosophy is unknown. The private credit maturity wall enters its most intense pressure phase in Q3 2026, and Moody's chief economist has stated publicly that if oil prices remain elevated through the end of Q2, a recession is more likely than not. These aren't vague, distant risks. They are specific, dated, scheduled events that will move the financial environment every middle-class household in America is operating inside. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell because the next 90 days in this rate cycle may be the most consequential for middle-class financial security. Since 2008, you want to be informed before the data becomes undeniable, not after. Share this with someone still making financial decisions based on an economic environment that no longer exists. The trap is real. The window is open. Use it.